I'm getting started on supper early today. Really exciting supper. We're going to have our first green beans. As far as cooking them the traditional way, when you think about boiling them for a long time, that's what we're going to do. We have ate a few messes of green beans of the early ones, but we just roasted them in the oven. So this is our first day of eating the traditional green beans that are eaten in Appalachia, but in other places too, especially in the South. So I'm going to make them even more special though today. This is something we typically don't do. I'm going to put potatoes in them, some of our new potatoes. I'm going to go out and grab some of the small ones out and put those in them as they cook. It's going to be so good. We usually don't do that. I'm not sure why I don't do that. I have in the past, but it's not something I always do. But this spring and summer, early summer, Granny's been doing that a lot. And hers are really, really good. And every time I love it because she'll say that her mother, Gazzy, she said, Mama made the best beans and new green beans and grabbled out new potatoes, and they were so good, and I could just eat them all day long. So every time she cooks a pot of them, she's been saying that. So I thought, well, I need to do that too. I need to cook some. It's been a long time since I've done this. So they are really good cooked together. You could do regular green, any time of the year. If you can get green beans in your grocery store and get some potatoes, you can do it that way too. But I think there's just something extremely tasty and special about doing the first green beans of the year and also those new potatoes. So I'm about finished breaking up the ones that I was going to break up today. I'll try and change my positions there so maybe you can see. These are the beans Matt and I picked that were actually from the seed that Debbie from Bryson Farm Supply gave us last year. We grew them for the first time last year, and we really liked them. And the people that donated, the way that she come up with or has her heirloom seeds, a lot of them, is that people would just, it was a store where people were coming in that often gardened and things like that. They would bring their seeds and say, hey, this seed's been passed down in my family for generations, or, I think y'all would really like this, try it. So that's how they accumulated the seeds, some of the seeds that Debbie shared with us. She was so nice to do that. So these were called the preacher bean. Now, if you search for that online, sometimes I've done that just for the fun of it after Debbie gave us these, and it looks to me what most often shows up is a bean that looks like a rattlesnake bean that has markings on it. So when you find out about, you start learning more about heirloom varieties, what you quickly learn is that different people call it different things. And maybe it is slightly different, but maybe it's the same bean, but families just call it different things. Reminds me of the bush bean. We didn't plant any of it this year, but we grew a lot of them last year, was the Yance bean. That's a bean that one of our dear friends, Brian Lambert, shared with us that had been passed down in his family for over 100 years. And one time I got to talk to his Uncle Alvin about it, and he said when he was a boy, some people called it, in his family, the young prince. But they called it Yance bean because that's where it come from, the Yance family. So anyway, interesting to think about how those things develop different names depending on where you're at. So then other people have asked, when I've said that, said, well, okay, Tipper, then what's this green bean the most like? If I had to, for myself, I think this preacher bean is most like a white half runner would be my guess. You can see some of the beans here. This one's like the perfect green bean. This yellow one, you can tell Matt and I left some of them a little bit too long on the vine. And then some of them are, like there's one that's not as full. So that's what I would say it's most similar to probably, in my opinion, is white half runners. Now, a lot of people say, well, how do what does a rattlesnake bean taste like? What does this taste like? What is that? You really have to taste for yourself, but also depends on your palate. Like Granny does not like the rattlesnake beans. To me, I can't hardly tell there's a different taste between them and a white half runner and a greasy bean. I think they all pretty much taste the same. Matt says he can tell a difference, but he does like them, Anyway, so that's kind of, I guess, depends on what your taste is. Another thing I wanted to, I'll just start as I start. So these that are, try to steal my bowl there, these that are really yellow like that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to I'll string it just to make it easier, and then I'm going to open it up and I'm going to get the beans out. So beans like this that you can see over here, mine that I've already been breaking up, you can see those loose ones in there. We call those shellies. And usually it's the end of the season before, it seems like as the season goes on, there's more shellies. So this is kind of early for that, but that's what we call those. This one, I just kind of take it bean by bean. This one's kind of tough feeling, so I'm going to open it and get the beans out. It's really too little to string. Let's see. So here's one that I would string. So I just pull one side, string, and then I pull the other side. And then as I break them up, if sometimes even though you pulled them, as you break them up, you'll see a little string that's somehow still there, then I would try to pull that off. Some people in my family, Matt, he's in there. No, I think he went outside. I think I heard him go outside. Are not as picky. And then what ends up, it doesn't hurt you. It just means sometimes you get a bite of green bean and there's a string on it. So here's another one that's just, that I would just string and break up. So this one felt like the string broke off on me. Let's see if it shows up. So it didn't show up, but let's try another one. No. So, and everybody has their own way of stringing beans. Granny has a little paring knife. She holds the knife as she strings. I'm not coordinated enough for that. I've got some critters in there with them. Corey, I think, does that too. But I do this. I do like maybe, I don't know, as many as my hand can hold. I do the strings. This is my method. Everybody has their own. And then I go back and break them all at once, kind of. Reminds me of hanging out clothes. Everybody has their own method of doing that too. I don't remember if it's Corey or somebody that I know, they like to string them all, then they like to break them up. So different ways of doing it, but you know what? All of them's right. It just matters is at the end of the, at the end, you've got green beans broke up and ready to actually cook. I really love beans with shellies in them, so that's going to be double exciting. And so you might ask, well, Chipper, why don't you just do all of them? Make sure that there's shellies in all of them. Green beans are the beans that are still pretty firm. It's hard to get the shelly out of them because their little membrane that's around them is still attached to the pod, so they're harder to shell out. So that's probably the biggest reason. Here's another good, someone asked me recently in the comments. So you can see this bean, it's got brown, it's kind of brown all over. This one right here is not brown all over, but it has like a little brown spot right there. So Granny would take her little knife and cut that out. And you think, well, a bean like that, I probably should just throw it away. It's been damaged somehow. Now sometimes they are damaged to the point that I would just, I would just put it, maybe I'd try to get the inside bean out, but I would just get rid of it. But it's kind of personal preference, depends on how picky you are. I'm not afraid to eat that, so I'm just going to throw it in. And this one little spot right there, you can kind of take your fingernail and scrape it out. Definitely a knife. You could break off that end and just throw it, or you could eat the whole thing. Again, it just depends. There's another little hole in this one. Let's see. So I think usually that's what I try to do if it's on the end, is just break it off. But if it somehow I don't do that and I miss it, or Matt's breaking them up, he don't even pay attention to those things. He throws them all in. We eat them, and it doesn't hurt us, and it doesn't make the beans taste bad. It's really mostly appearance. Now sometimes, unless it was, if you had really bug damage, you might need to do more than that. But if it's just a stray spot here and there, you can remove it with a little knife, with your fingernail, break off the end, or just leave it and eat it. Okay, now that I've got these broke up, I'm on my last one here. I'm gonna get the shellies out of this one. There's that one little bean in there. I'll check it out. I think I'll just break that one. Got picked, I'm sure, accidentally by me or Matt. It was so little, I should have left it. Now I'll show you what I do next before I'm ready to cook them. So the first thing I do is I want to give them a good rinse. I can see there's a piece of trash that I've left in there somehow that's went in with the beans. But I want to give them a good rinse to get off the. You think about dust and pollen and things like that, just to get all that off. So you can see the water's kind of cloudy and a little got a brown or yellow tint to it. So I'm going to rinse them one more time. Kind of shaking them around like that and doing them with my hands, kind of like you're thinking about you're washing, you know, clothes or something like that, or just washing them. It just helps get any of that grit and dust off of them. And this is one of my favorite parts of, there's so many different parts of growing a garden and harvesting food that's my favorite. Of course, the favorite should be eating it, and I do love to eat them. I do love to eat fresh things. But I love the planting, I love the harvest, and I love all that. But I even love this. Probably goes back to that I've never outgrew my love of playing in water as a kid, you know, loving to play in the creeks and the mud holes and the things like that. So I love that, just the nature of water is such a soothing thing to me. And then I love how it looks, especially right here in my kitchen window. I love how the sunshine plays along the beans there, how you can see the sun and then the shadow. And then whether it's, you know, green beans or grapes or something like that, it's just, they're just like jewels. Even if I'm washing cucumbers, you know, I always like to wash my stuff when I bring it in, the zucchini, the squash, whatever it is. And there's also a real satisfaction in knowing that you grew it, or, you know, with the good Lord's help, you grew it, and also that it's so fresh. It's like I guess it's like a bowl. When I'm doing this, I'm like, it's a bowl full of jewels, real jewels, you know. Might kind of sound kind of silly or sappy, but it's true. And I guess they say that you eat with your eyes, so maybe that's part of it. So let me drain these, and then I'll show you what I do next. Another good thing about doing this is by hand like this is then you can, those little strings that you missed, sometimes you see them and you can grab them as you're going through them. I guess I'm looking the beans one more time. Now this next step is not really necessary. You don't have to do it, but I do it because it's the way that I learned how to cook green beans, the way Granny taught me. So I have my beans in there. I'm going to cover them with water. We'll pour it all in there. And then I'm going to put this on the stove, and I'm going to bring it to heat. I'm actually going to bring it to a boil. I'm going to bring it to boil. I'm going to let it boil like just a minute or something, not very long. And then I'm going to drain them and rinse them again. Now, again, that part's not necessary. You don't have to do it, but it's the way Granny taught me. And Granny says that if you do that, make sure your beans are good and clean, but also it gets rid of what she called bean scum. Bean scum. I'll try to show you some if it appears in here. It usually does. It's just kind of a foamy stuff, which wouldn't hurt you at all. Corey and Katie and my niece April, they love to eat raw green beans. They used to raid Pap and Granny's garden, and my girls will still walk by and get them a green bean and eat it. So it's not like it's something that would hurt you. But again, this is the way Granny taught me, so it's the way I continue to do it. Okay, I brought the beans to a boil. I've already turned them off, but you can see that? That's part of the scum that Granny was talking about. Again, it won't hurt you, and most people don't do this step, but that was why, you know, I'm doing it the way Granny showed me to do it, because that's just how I learned. So now I'm going to rinse them off one more time and then put them back in this pot, fill it with clean water, and then I'll show you how I'm going to set them to cook for a little while. Now that I've got the clean water in, turn them back up pretty high to start with, and then I might turn them back down, but I've got them, I guess, on medium high. Now you got to think about what you want to season your beans with. Sometimes Granny and other people just use like, you know, some sort of oil, whether it's olive oil. Granny wouldn't use that, but vegetable oil, canola oil, something like that. Me and Matt like to use, and most people in our area like to use either some type of meat for seasoning. So bacon works good. Side meat or salt pork is what we prefer. Today I've got hog jows. I just happen to have some Granny give me, so I'm going to use hog jowl. You could use ham. You could just use bacon grease. We've done that when we don't have any meat and we want to make a big pot of beans. We might put a spoonful of bacon grease in there. And then you know, salt and pepper, it generally is the only seasoning we would use, and the salt would really depend on if we were using that salt pork. It's pretty salty. You know, it's cured with salt, so you kind of have to be careful with how much you add. But today, since I'm just adding the hog jowls, I'll put those in there. I probably will add a little bit of salt. And as these cook, and we will let them cook the rest of the day, really. That's the way we like our green beans. Some people say cook to death, but that's just like they're really soft, and that's just how we like them. That's like the traditional way to cook green beans in the mountains of Appalachia. A lot of people like them less done, maybe more tender, like tender but still crisp, if that makes sense. Of course, there's lots of people that saute their beans that don't boil them like this, but this is the traditional Appalachian way to cook them for sure. So I'm going to turn it on, I'm going to let them boil, and then I'm going to turn them down, and I'm really going to let them boil pretty much all day and until it's supper time. And what I'll need to do though is you have to keep a good eye on them. The worst thing to do is to scorch your beans, and oh my goodness, I've done it before. I've forgot that I was even cooking beans and went and got involved in something and then come back and they were scorched. So I need to keep a watch on them, and I will keep adding water as the water cooks down. And then in the last probably 30 minutes, before supper, it's when I will add the potatoes. And then I let the potatoes, because they won't take as long to cook as the green beans. If I put the potatoes in now, by the time supper time gets here, they would just be mush. They would just cook away into, you know, they would just be part of the liquid in there. They would just turn into a soup. So I'm going to put the lid on these. I'm going to clean up my mess, and then I need to go outside and find my potatoes. Even though I'm not going to use them right now, I want to go ahead and get that out of the way while it's still on the cooler side this morning. Although it's not really that cool right now.
How many do you need?
Well, whatever you think. I got Matt to come out and help me with the potatoes. He volunteered. He knows how good it's going to be.
The little baby one.
A little bitty one. They eat good too.
They do. You
can see how dry the dirt is for sure.
I'll just get all these.
Yeah,
right. It's time to get them out.
That's what I would do. Some of them, we like to use those smaller ones in the green beans, but the bigger ones we'll just wait and use those at a later time.
That's going to about do this bag. Want more on that?
I think that'll do. While we're out here, I'm going to make Matt do one more thing. I'm going to make you some fried green tomatoes. So would you pick a tomato? I see almost a red one back there, Matt. You getting excited about that?
Yep.
Ooh, it's getting close. You may have to have a sandwich by tomorrow. That should be good. Only you and Austin will eat them. Thank you.
Is that enough?
That's enough. Got the beans going. They're boiling away, doing good cooking. I'm going to turn them down in a little bit, but I'm going to leave them where they're at for right now. I'm going to keep an eye on the water. I need to write it on my hand, make sure I don't forget. Maybe Matt will help me remember. And then I've got my potatoes and my tomatoes. I've got those 2 green tomatoes I'll make for Matt and Austin. They both love them. Ready to go for later this evening when I'm ready to finish up supper. I have, as far as the meat we're going to have in the crock pot, I just have a roast, just a roast. I didn't put no potatoes, I didn't put no carrots, I didn't put nothing. I'm just cooking the roast, so we'll just have roast beef. And of course I'm going to make cornbread. Of course I got to have cornbread with a meal like this. And I think that's all I'll make. Maybe I'll run out and see if I can find a cucumber, maybe some little tomatoes from our garden to go with it. That always, and some green onions, that always brightens up the meal. And then I need to think about if I could make a dessert. I don't know. I've got some other things I've got to do today, which is nice to do this. The crock pot and the beans will cook. Mostly that'll be, my supper will be done. But, you know, the tomatoes won't take long. The cornbread I can do in my sleep. So if I could think of an easy dessert, I might throw a dessert in there too. So I'll have to think about that though as I go about my day. Late in the day now. Got a lot of work done today, which is good. And now I'm ready to finish up supper. So I decided I'm going to make a cobbler. Those are so easy. So I've got a stick of butter in my pan here. I'm going to go ahead and put it in the oven so it can be melting. And then I'm going to go ahead and put the potatoes. It's time to put them in my green beans so they'll have time to cook before supper's ready. You can see the beans are looking great. They're going to be so good. Oh my goodness, I can't wait. That's going to be a meal by itself there. Matt's been helping me make sure that I kept water in it. I had to go to the post office, and I got to the post office and texted him, was like, please put water in my beans. He said, I already have. So these little ones, I'm just gonna throw them in. Some of them will get more done than the others. Some of those little tiny ones may cook up, but they'll be okay. I don't want them to go to waste, and this is a perfect way to actually use them. Whoops, that one had a bad place. I'm going to get it and trim a little on it. Well, it may have just been the place on the skin. I thought it looked like a bad place, but it didn't really feel like it. Some of these that are larger, just because those are so tiny, I'm going to go ahead and I guess I'm going to cut those in two. I might should have cut that one. That looks like I wonder if that's a bad place on that one. Cut that little place out. Just nestle them down in there. By the time I get everything else cooked, they will have time to cook about another 30 minutes or so. And you can always, check and see if they need to go a little bit longer or if they're totally done to your liking. And you may like yours, mushier than we do. Put that one over there. Trying to decide if I think that's enough. It may be enough. I think I'll put one more down in there. I'm going to put the lid back on and let them continue to cook, like I said, till I get everything done, which I'm hoping is in about 30 to 45 minutes, but I'll keep a check on them. And I see I'm about to have a real disaster here. Back here in the back, thank goodness I looked. I need to turn that way down. Actually, I just need to turn it off. What I'm cooking back here that almost boiled over on me, thank goodness it didn't, is some peaches for my cobbler. These are peaches that my nephew Ben last year let us come and harvest some of the peaches off his tree. It was so many peaches on it that it actually broke the tree. So I had some in the freezer, so we've been enjoying them all winter in cobblers and whatever I needed peaches for. So I just have them, I put them in here with a little bit of sugar and some water just to cook them. They were froze, and just to kind of get them a little bit softer and really to sweeten them up a little bit before I put them in the cobbler. So I think they're ready to go though now. So I've turned that off. Thank goodness I seen it before it bubbled over. Now that I've got the potatoes in, I've got my green tomatoes over here with some salt on them. So they'll be ready for me to do. I'm going to go ahead and whip up the cobbler. Scoot that back a little bit. So my butter is melted in my pan there. And this is a super easy recipe. I think I've even shared it in a video before, but I'm sure you've made it yourself too. Get that out of my way. So I put in a cup of self-rising flour, a cup of sugar. I think it's Jim Cassida just uses plain flour, and it still turns out really good, so you could try that. I usually use milk, but this is almond milk. That's what Katie's drinking because she needs to not do dairy because of nursing the baby. The baby is sensitive to lactose, so this is actually almond milk. And I've already tried this once, and it turned out really good, so I'm going to do it again so that Katie can enjoy it too. I'm going to put just a little splash of vanilla. Ooh. Maybe that was more than a splash, but that'll be okay. And then just stir it all up. Cobblers are a real comfort food, I think. But also they're so easy, and I guess that's why easy for busy people to whip up, and if you serve them often, then you have all those wonderful memories tied to them. I think I'm going to get my little whisk though to try to beat up some of the flour places. Of course, I need a place to put that. Maybe I can just hold it while I do this. I'll put it in my there. Now, a good tip to make that smoother that I never ever do, but I should, is to mix your flour and sugar. Go ahead and mix it together before you add the liquid. I never do that. I always forget. Don't even think about it. So now I'm going to just pour it over the butter. I haven't asked my nephew how the peaches are doing this year on his tree. A lot of times when you have a bumper crop like that, then the next year it doesn't do as good. So I'll have to ask him and see how it's doing this year. Probably won't use all of these, but I'll put them in the refrigerator and someone will eat them over a biscuit or something like that in the coming days. Okay, now I'm going to get this back in the oven. Woo, I'm not going to do it like that though, that's too hot. So I just got the cobbler out of the oven. I put my pan into heat that I'm going to make my cornbread in. I like to get my pan hot before I pour the batter in. I have my fried green tomatoes I'm going to make for Matt. I've got them over there ready. I just dip them in an egg wash, and then I just dip them in cornmeal. And I do use a self-rising cornmeal, so there's a little bit of flour in there and some leavening. But we prefer, I don't really like fried green tomatoes, but Matt does. But things like that, thinking of fried squash or fried okra, we like them with like a light breading on them. A lot of times if you eat in a restaurant, it'll have a really thick breading, and that's fine. A lot of people like that, like they dip it in, dip it back and forth between the egg wash and maybe flour and then cornmeal. That's fine. But that's just not how we like ours, so it's just a very, very light breading. Anyway, I have all that ready to go. So while my pan's coming up to heat, I'm going to run outside and see if I can find some little tomatoes. I seen some out there earlier today, so I'm going to see what I can find, and also get some green onions. So here's some of the ones I seen earlier today when I was out here. Let's see if there's a few more, I think, down here. I don't want to get them, those that are not ripe yet. I also seen those first ones I picked were the ones we got from David and Carolyn that we love to grow. I think this is the bumblebee. If I can get that one to let go. I've not ate one of these this year. There's one or two more. I guess I'll leave that one. Earlier today I saw this too. This is a German Johnson tomato. It's still pretty hard, so I guess I'll leave it, but maybe in another day or two we'll be able to eat that. I don't know if Matt will want it for his tomato sandwich or if he wants to hold out for the Cherokee Purple. I think there's a Cherokee Purple that's almost ripe too. Of course, I can't walk by the blueberries without picking at least a few. Harvested most all the cucumbers yesterday evening, but there's one that I missed. It's pretty big. Here's one of the first little, I think this is the first one from the Arkansas Little Leaf. I had to replant those, but they're just now starting to produce. Well, not a huge harvest. I did pull up some green onions to go with it. They will really brighten things up. But I have some other cucumbers inside, and at least I got enough tomatoes for all of us to have one. If you're wondering what kind of oil I'm using, I'll use olive oil almost exclusively, but you could use, canola oil, vegetable oil, whatever kind of oil you prefer. Now, lard or bacon grease or something like that would be really great. If you had access to home rendered lard, that would be delicious. And if I had thought about it, now that I'm standing here talking, I should have used Tom's Bear Grease, but I didn't think about it. I should have, though. That would have been really good, I'm sure. Like them?
No, it's going to be fantastic. I haven't had none of them in a long time.
We'll get more than that
Well, I'm going to
because,
save some for Austin.
well, I've got 3 over there for Austin too, so y'all can, I know you ain't gonna get all those, but go ahead. Now for the best thing there is. Look at that. Don't those look good?
Yeah, buddy.
New green beans, new potatoes. Hard to beat.
I think it'd just be... No, I better not say that. Never mind.
What?
Started to say it'll just be downhill from here. But,
Oh, well.
generally, it's not.
Canned green beans are great, and
But they ain't
potatoes
like
are good
this.
any time of the year, but yeah, they're not like this. Looks like a feast.
Yeah.
A really simple supper, but really tasty. I know it's going to be. I've not tasted the green beans or the potatoes, even though I wanted to all day long. I just thought I'm going to make myself wait till supper time to taste them. So, very simple. Putting a roast in a crock pot is super easy. And all I did was put seasoning, salt and pepper, and maybe some, I don't know. Oh, I used actually some peppers, dried pepper mix that someone sent us. Rob, I've wrote his name. I can see it from here. Rob, thank you, Rob. I put that on it. I've been using it a lot, and it's really wonderful. Anyway, so simple. And I actually meant to pour a little bit of beef broth just because I had some in the refrigerator over the roast as it cooked, but I forgot, so I didn't even do that. Didn't even do that. So super simple for that. I'm not going to get any of the tomatoes because I don't like them. I am going to get one of those little red tomatoes though, and of course I'm going to get me an onion. I got to put me some salt out so I can dip my onion in it, and put me some salt on the cucumber. I bet you can guess what I'm going to do with the cornbread. I might save my crunchy part, my crust, but over the others, that's where I'm going to put my tomatoes. I'm going to put my green beans and my potatoes over that. What I need though is to get some of the pot liquor. I seen Matt with a spoon. He was getting some of the meat broth. I'm going to get some of the bean broth. Put it over my cornbread. What a feast. Taste a little bit of the green beans. That's what I've been wanting all day. I know everything else will be good too, but so good. Like I said, we eat green beans about once a week all year round because we can them. And they're good, but when you cook them fresh, they're so good. Just eating them when they're fresh and new, the green beans and the potatoes, just takes it up a notch. Even though they're good year round, we eat potatoes mostly that we buy from the grocery store and we like them. But when you can have new potatoes and the cornbread and the beans. Just a true feast. If I have that and just the onion and the tomato and the cucumber, that's enough for me. I don't need the meat, and I don't need the, of course I don't like the fried green tomatoes, but I don't even need the meat. Potatoes are just cooked to perfection. Just kind of melt in your mouth. Such good flavor too with that hog jowl. Really, really good. Austin and Corey just come in. We've been trying to let them eat with us as much as we can, as much as they want to. We're not forcing them to, just to help out since with the new baby and everything. So they just come in, and of course I want to see the baby. I've not seen him all day. I'm going to go and eat this wonderful meal with my family. I'm always glad when you stop by to help me celebrate Appalachia. And I hope you'll leave me a comment and tell me, do you ever eat green beans and new potatoes like this?